Great to see you here this morning. This is Christ the King Sunday. It's the Sunday in the church year. It's the very last of the Sundays of the church year. And so it's the big kind of culminating celebration of what it means for Christ to be the king. And yet here in the United States, we don't have kings. In fact, we told the British we didn't think much of their king. And so it's difficult for us to sometimes relate to what it means to be king. And yet there's always this thing inside of us that wants to have a king, or maybe even wants to be a king or a queen. You know, back in the 1960s and 50s, there was a TV show, one of the most successful TV shows during the time, that was called A Queen for a Day. Anybody remember that show? Yeah. So let me see. So you correct me if I'm wrong. So what happened in A Queen for a Day was that they had a guest panel of 3 different women, and they would compete against each other about why it was that they were supposed to be the queen for the day. And so, and there were all of these prizes. You know, they'd win appliances for their house and furniture, and there was a car, and so there was all of this stuff that they could win. But they had to be able to persuade the audience that they were the ones who deserved to be the queen for the day. And so there are all kinds of stories and all kinds of things that they would say. And then the guest host would go, point to each one of them, and there was an applause meter. It was one of the first times that an applause meter was ever used with an audience. And according to the amount of applause, then that person would be the queen for the day and win all of the stuff. So I thought we might do a little bit this morning for whether or not you should be the king or the queen for the day. And so what we'll do is we'll say, for those who would like to be able to be the king or queen for a day, imagine that, so a little imagination here, imagine that if we decide, we the congregation here are going to vote, and if we decide on you and your reason, then you are going to be king or queen of St. Mary's for a day, and you're going to have $1 million to do whatever it is that you want, okay? So, but now the question is, why should you be the person who would be the king or queen for the day? And so then we'll have several people go, and then as we go along, then we'll vote to see which one it is that we think should be the king or queen for the day. So I'm going to go first, and I'm the guy up front, okay? So I'm going to say that if you vote for me as king of the day of St. Mary's, I'm going to give everyone who's here today $100. That's pretty good, don't you think? Don't you think that's pretty good? That should get me some votes, don't you think? All right. So you've got my bid in terms of why it is that you think that, why I think I should be the king for the day. Now, do we have a challenger, or do I just win? Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. Why should you be the king for the day? What are you going to give us?
I'm going to give you guys $1,000 each day, and you guys get to go to any church you would like, and you have to learn about God.
Wow. Did you all hear that? Did you hear that? $1,000 every day, and you can go to any church you want to. You don't have to stick to St. Mary's. And you to be able to learn about God. That's really cool. All right. So that's number 2. So we'll do 2 more. All right. Are there other challengers to the 2 of us? Yes?
I think that I will die on the cross for the sins of the world to save everyone and be able to enter the kingdom of heaven.
Wow. Okay. So Zelia is willing to die on the cross. If we make her the queen, she'll die on the cross for the sins of the world so that everybody can come to heaven. Is that right? All right. So is there one more? Oh, yes, Michael.
Declare world peace.
Declare world peace. That is, if for $1 million in a day, that's pretty good. All right, so we have now 4 possibilities. So you got it in your mind who you're going to vote for? Now, so there's an applause meter, all right, and I'm the judge. So those who believe that mine is the best, so that I should win King for the Day here of St. Mary's, please say yay. Okay, well, I'm not feeling terribly excited at my options, but okay, number two, those who believe that number 2 ought to be the King for the Day, please signify by saying yay. That was pretty good. That's pretty good. Now here's Zelia, who's doing the crucifixion thing. Are you ready? Number 3, yay. 1, 2, 3. Ooh, that's very close. That's very close. And number 4, we got Michael over here, who is world peace. What do you think? Oh gosh, what do you think? That is pretty tough. That's a tough choice. I think I think I didn't win, and the other 3, I think it's probably pretty close to a tie. Do you think? Is it a tie? Do you think he won? Do you think? All right, let's do it. So I'm out. So we'll do 3 really quick. Number 1. Yay! Number 2. Number 3. Yay! Oh, tough. I think you're the winner. Well, now that we got our juices going here a little bit, it is interesting to think about what it means to be king or queen, and what you would do, or what anyone would do, in order to be able to be king or queen, in order to be able to be the person who is in power. It's maybe not a surprise then that for some people, they would do almost anything. They would do almost anything to be able to be the king or queen. So we have then folks who are through the history of the world who, when there's the throne and there's all of the power and all of the wealth and all of the stuff that comes with being king or queen, that you would do almost anything in order to be able to take that place. So we find ourselves in the gospel lesson for this morning encountering a man by the name of Pilate. Pilate was the governor of that area. He served the king, who is Caesar in Rome, but for all intents and purposes there, he was kind of the king. And he was not a nice guy. He was brutal. In fact, there were numbers of times when he was concerned that people would be revolting against him, and so he would send in his troops, and he would use brutality and force to contain them. There was a time when, just after the time of Jesus, when the Samaritans all went off to Mount Gerizim, which is a holy site for them, and they gathered by the thousands there in order to be able to come together and to worship, but the fear was that they were going to actually try to overthrow Pilate. And he sent his soldiers and slaughtered them by the thousands. By the thousands. The history of the world has not been good when it comes to what it is that people are willing to do in order to be king or queen. Someone suggested they have these certain virtues about them. Blessed are the strong, for they shall possess the earth. Blessed are the powerful, for they shall be reverenced among men. Blessed are the victorious, for victory is the basis of right. Blessed are the battle-blooded. Beauty shall smile upon them. Blessed are the iron-fisted. The unfit shall flee before them. Blessed are the clever, for they shall outmaneuver their opponents. And blessed are the merciless. Their posterity shall own the world. It's a tough way to live, but it's a seductive way to live. It's the way that oftentimes people who are in this world, who are combating for power and influence, oftentimes end up acting and treating the people who are around them. We come then to this confrontation of this Pilate, this man whose history has been one of brutality, and Jesus. Jesus, who comes before him, and there is this kind of confrontation that happens between the two of them. Pilate is very nervous about whether this guy is a king, whether this guy is somebody who's going to try to dethrone him, and whether this guy is somebody who's going to be a threat to him. And so he comes, Pilate comes, and he sits on his throne, and there Jesus comes, and Jesus has been stripped of everything. His hands are probably tied, and he has this conversation with Pilate. And the question is, so are you a king? Are you going to be a challenge to me? Are you the kind of king that I should fear? And Jesus says an interesting thing. He says, well, you've said that I'm a king, but my kingdom, the kind of kingdom that I have, is not of this world, is not the same kind of kingdom as the kind of kingdom that you are concerned about, that you're worried about. If it were, my soldiers, my followers, they'd pick up weapons and they'd come after you. They'd defend me in some way. But my kingdom isn't like that. And so Pilate, it must have been kind of confused in his own mind because he's so concerned about power and how it is that he can keep his own power. Do you even think that he understands this kingdom that Jesus is talking about? And so it's one of the poignant images, if you can imagine yourself. So here is Pilate with all of his soldiers and all of his weapons and all of his influence and all of his stuff that's there, kind of arrayed. And here is Jesus. And it seems like he is the most powerless, the most kind of the meekest, the mildest, the least among everyone. No threat to Pilate at all. And yet, who's in control? Who's in charge? Who's the one who has the real power? That's an important question. That's really an important question for us to be able to ask. So is it the one with power and prestige and influence? Is that the person who's in power and in control? Or is it one who associates themselves with this other kingdom? This other kingdom. And so we might then hear the words of the principles of that kingdom. He sat down with his followers and he said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven." Wow. That's a different kind of a kingdom, isn't it? That's a different way of living. It's a different way of looking at life. It's a different way of relating to the people who are around us. A different kind of a kingdom. And so we want to ask the question for us about power. So was Jesus not powerful? So Pilate was powerful. Was Jesus not powerful? It would seem from looking at the outside, at the externals, Jesus was the one who was not powerful. And yet we know who Jesus really was. On this day, we celebrate that Jesus was the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. If that's the case, then this Jesus was the one who helped create the entire universe, everything that is. In fact, in some ways, he was the one who was responsible for overseeing that Pilate was even born. He was the one who has all power and all majesty and all kingdoms in his hands. and yet came and allowed himself to be treated in such a way and to represent such a different kind of peaceable kingdom. Why would he do that? Why in the world would he do that? Well, if it's not because of power, in fact, if Jesus was all-powerful, then the only reason is because of love. It's just because of love. There's a story that is told about a powerful king. He was the most powerful king. He was the most powerful king of the most powerful kingdom in the then known world. And he was traveling through the country. He had never married himself. And not that he hadn't married himself, but he had never married. And that was a joke. And as he was traveling through the countryside, he noticed that there was a handmaid, a very poor young gal, who he had heard about and seen from a distance. And his heart went out to her. He was smitten by this young gal. And so his entourage continued to kind of move on, and he went back to his very palatial palace. And he began to be troubled. And it was because he loved her. He loved her. More than anything else, he loved her. But now the question was, well, if he loved her and he wanted to invite her to spend the rest of his life with him, if he was going to invite her to marry him and to be the queen with him, then how would he do that? Because, if this powerful king were to go to this little peasant girl and to say, I would like for you to be my wife, then what is she going to say? What would she say? Of course. Hot dog. But the question is, would she love him? He was so overwhelming, so strong, and so powerful, it's almost just because of who he was that she would almost have to say, yes, I'll come and do that. But he would never know what was in her heart. So then he thought, well, maybe what I'll do is I'll go. I'll just go there, and I'll take my entourage and all the way that I travel and everything, and I'll go to her, and I will say, please come and marry me. That's humble, isn't it? And yet still, it's the same problem, because she would see him for all he was, even though he came to her, and still she would be so overwhelmed, she wouldn't be able to say no, and she would never be able to reveal her true heart. And so the king, in his deliberations and in his worrying and his fretting and everything, decides there's only one way. And it is for me to be able to leave behind my throne, to go and to be a peasant just like she is a peasant, to work alongside in whatever area it was, and to be able to prove himself to her in a way that she could understand as an equal to her, and to see if it would be possible for him to be able to win her heart. And then once he was able to win her heart, then finally he would ask her to marry him and reveal the fact that he was, in fact, the king. Jesus comes to us, and oftentimes I fear that we think that he comes to us and he's not powerful. But the demonstration of his meekness and his mildness is not an indication of his lack of power. It's only an indication of the greatness of his love, his desire to come and to meet us on our own terms, whether we're little kids or whether we're in the final years of our lives or any place in between, that Jesus is able to come to us and to see us as peers, as equals, to wrestle through the questions of our lives and to ask the question, will you give me your heart? Will you give me your heart out of absolute freedom? Will you surrender yourself into a relationship with me? And then we'll go places. And then we'll do things. But I don't want us to go any place or do anything until you answer for me the question, do we have a relationship? Will you give to me your heart? It is one of the precious things about the Christian faith, that our God doesn't overwhelm us, but he comes to meet each one of us just exactly where we are and wants to build a relationship with us, a relationship that is built on his mercy and peace and his love for us. Amen. So let's stand together on this Christ the King Sunday and confess the faith of our hearts and of our lives by using the form of the Nicene Creed.